Hi guys, in this video we're going to be looking at heavy metal mascots. So here are the bizarre monsters that represent the world of heavy metal. Maybe it's the gang mentality within extreme music that has driven many bands to become so obsessed with mascots. For those that don't know, heavy metal culture has always fostered an us against the world mentality that's similar to that of most sports teams. It's only fitting that bands would want to come up with characters that represent the music. Whatever the reason, metal is more mascot focused than any other genre of music, going so far as to give its horrific visual allegories, backstories and personalities. Now what am I even doing here? For some reason, RIOT sound like Raven and Exciter. The New York based classic metal act used a baby seal as their mascot. Not only that, but their attempts to make Seal more anthropomorphic are super awkward and bizarre. 1 minute he's squatting like a sumo wrestler, and the next he's turning into an evil businessman. Is the Seal evil? Are Seals into metal? How did this even happen? That was done on the bust the same morning. The DEATHBAT not only feels like a rip-off of OVERKILL's Charlie, but its initial incarnation looks like two different dingbats placed on top of one another. While it's certainly iconic and provides AVENGED SEVENFOLD fans something more easy to get as a tattoo, it doesn't really have an identity beyond the most basic of skull graphics. Fine as a logo, but a little bit more than a shrug as a mascot. Got Austin sleeve metalers, dangerous toys heralds the genre trying to adapt to a more oncoming 90s. Nothing too satanic or gross, but kind of crazy. The result is heavy metal Jack in the Box clown that every dude in the mid to late 90s got inked in their shoulder blade. Overall, just skip the circus. On paper, Halloween's Jacko seems like a sure thing, an epic spirit with a jack-o'-lantern head, but the truth is that the band have used him in such a bizarre number of ways that it kind of feels ridiculous. More so, for a pumpkin head mascot, a band named after a spooky holiday, Jacko doesn't feel very Halloween. Instead, acts like a proxy for every power metal cliche out there. Sure, he's fine, but Children of Bodom's recurring character kind of comes off incidental. The BODOM Reapers looks like the band that got a friend to dress up for a spooky outfit for their first album, going with the idea. Still, there are occasional moments where the Reaper gets reinterpreted, as well as on their recent album Hexed. Whether or not the wrong company knows it, ALESTORM's mascot is the one and only Captain Morgan, sort of grog and wearer of floppy hats. The character allows the band to put him in all sorts of hilarious scenarios, like travelling from time to kill Vikings to sinking to the bottom of the ocean. However, while this undead pirate is cool enough, the fact that the band didn't really give him much of a lore lands him in many leagues from other mascots who will feature in this video, and I'll give them that. At the end of the day, this demonic mummy, ABOMINAE, who appears on the album covers of American power metal band I Surf, is a pretty solid metal mascot. Composing throughout time, he's got glowing eyes, the whole 9 yards, but when you look at him, he's a blatant rip-off of Iron Maiden's Eddie. Though he's distinct from Iron Maiden's mischievous zombie in many ways, he will always be a shade of Eddie rather than his own unique identity. That said, as far as a B-list metal mascots go, this guy is pretty solid. Sort of what it says on the label. The Mad Butcher feels like a kind of weird mascot for an icy German thrash metal band, but the structure have to run with it pretty hard, to the point where they have someone dressed as a butcher come on stage at their shows. That said, unlike other mascots, it's hard to put a chubby one-eyed cleaver waver in the lofty cosmic situations, so you're sort of just stuck in the butcher shop. Not bad, kind of cool. Heavy metal mascots are a little harder to find, and those that did exist were often hard-rocking Joe Camels posing with cartoon bimbos, but Quiet Riot's man in the Iron Mask actually has a lot of character to him, and feels like he represents a lot of metal fans out there whose thoughts and feelings are silenced on or fall on deaf ears. The mask has eventually become more important than the motivation behind it, but its Hannibal Lecter-ish qualities continue to represent metalheads who constantly question their own sanity. Now, what if Eddie was jacked and loved to crush energy drinks? Feels like the concept behind Five Finger Death Punch's knucklehead character, but unlike many more contemporary bands, Five Finger Death Punch have remained admirably loyal to their cartoon representative, and in all honesty, the character does very much look like the band's music sounds, which is really the goal of a metal mascot. As such, Knucklehead has become an important figure in the Mascots pantheon and is perhaps the most contemporary character in this video. The kids are alright, sort of. Now, it takes some balls to take a notebook doodled late 90s crazy dude face and turn it into a franchise-long mascot, but Disturbed did it surprisingly well with it. Using the guy on 4 straight album covers from 2005 to 2015, even more impressively, they've sort of used him in the same context on every album, wilding out or hulking dramatically in a stony wasteland. Without making it feel repetitive, maybe not so versatile as some of the other mascots mentioned, but definitely iconic for new metal. One gets the sense that KREATOR fell into their own Violent Mind character after he made his first appearance as a simple barbarian demon cover on 1986 Pleasure to Kill. It wasn't even until 1990's Coma of Souls that his fuel identity seemed to merge with view into his twisted brain. However, the band have continued to use him as grotesque embodiment of society's ills and have expanded his identity from simple war monster to noxious, ferocious beast to the apocalypse. A weird one to be sure, but a worthy inclusion. While several bands have used undead soldiers as their mascots, only one sneering, smoking drill sergeant straight out Full Metal Jacket. In a lot of ways, S.O.D. Sergeant D represents both the evils of war and the obnoxious, faux ignorant stance taken by the band. And yet, while he's grody and straightforward, there's something kind of endearing about the Sarge. He doesn't feel as elevated or as serious as other mascots, making him a character you can have a beer. His strength is that you already know him. A devil skull with bat wings is already metalhead. Is what every metalhead has at some point doodled drawn on something, whether it's the margins of a turnpaper or the wall of an abandoned big building. OVERKILL took the idea and ran, making it radioactive green and using it as a crest, character or signature as they saw fit. It just depends on whether you like him as a dungeon monster, scientific experiment, or just a symbol of an industry. Not earthly as KNARRENHEIZ, the gas-sporting gun-toting mascot of German thrasher SODOM, a symbol for the band's militant music. He also acts as a all-purpose thrash metal mascot. He's got all the hallmarks of the genre. Nuclear-powered, covered in spikes, driven by war and contempt for mankind. Much like Eddie, Heinz has gone through several incarnations, but they're always battle-oriented. Though silent, observant on the covers of early albums like Agent Orange, he has become a total death machine. The Not Man's story, in many ways, ANTHRAX story. The infamous Mustachio, the stereotype, is one of those weird rubber finger puppets that you can buy from every New York's drugstore or stationery shop. That feels indicative of ANTHRAX's whole scrappy career in the outer boroughs during the 80s, as well as their bizarre senses of humour and inherent skate park nerdiness. Not a mascot who gets used a ton, but one that is hilariously immortal. Only Ronnie James Dio could name a being so mysterious and arcane Murray. The Dio Demon, a supernatural being somewhere between Satan and Set, is awesome in part because it doesn't try to be edgy the way every other metal mascot does. There's an implication on the covers of albums like Last in Line or Dream Evil that Murray is an ancient spirit, not an interdimensional gadabout, but doesn't drink with mutants or at future bars or ride motorcycles with buxom women. He watches over the nighttime world. In that respect, he's both more laid back and more even than most of the other figures mentioned here. While the Baphogoat from Slayer's debut album, Showing the Mercy, has become an icon, the band's real mascot is the Ghost of War screaming demonic skull wearing a World War II helmet. Chilling, iconic and adaptable, the Ghost represents the heart of Slayer's dark bloody message that humanities and the horrors we create are the true devil in this world. Originally created as a goofy decal for the band's fan club, the Screaming Skull soon took a more fearsome expression and eventually became the ultimate representative of thrash metal. At the end of the day, there's nothing more evil than ignorance, and that's what makes Megadeth's Vic Rattlehead so powerful. He's not a good guy, but by having his ears, eyes and mouth permanently riveted, Vic can see, hear and speak no evil, making him the embodiment of death by lack of knowledge. While he puts on his suit and plays politician, Vic is also sending the United Nations out from under us and meeting with suited sociopaths and over the corpses of hidden aliens. Of what's wrong with the world, reminding fans that to see, hear and say nothing leads on to despair on a global scale. The extra bit of skin color commentary makes him a powerful representation of Thrash, where Metal still focused on wizards and reacted to the world at large. The gold standard. Iron Maiden's Eddie is the truest metal mascot of all time, and the one against which all other metal mascots can be judged. He touches on horror, society, sci-fi, and ancient history. Name a location or aspect of culture, and you can be there, and Eddie's for it. Eddie's awesome, but he's everywhere. He's everyone's mascot, embraced by everything from stadiums to soccer teams. And while that's not necessarily a bad thing, it just means that he doesn't have that esoteric metal quality, the underground vibe that represents not being like everyone else. An undying figurehead of metal for the entire world, to be sure, even though that's sort of the problem. The face that launched thousands of tattoos. What makes MOTÖRHEAD Snaggletooth especially awesome is that it's not a creature that exists outside of the band's world. It's not a zombie or a demon or even an animal. It's just a tusk war pig that wears a military helmet and has its teeth pierced. Whether you put that face on a body or wear it on the front of your riding mower, Snaggletooth is a monstrous emblem of rock and roll, and it's most dangerous, attitude driven. It excludes a belligerent outsider status because it's too dark, spiny, and aggressive for anyone looking to ironically wear a metal tee. Now the band it represents, Snaggletooth is a louder, meaner, cooler than what the world is at a large comfortable with, making him the ultimate representation of metal music at large. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.